When you've been married for 10 years, you learn to pick up on subtleties. A glance that lasts a second too long, a text message that prompts an overly casual explanation, or, in my case, a new perfume suddenly worn every time she runs errands. I wasn't looking for reasons to suspect Sophie. I loved her with everything I had. We met in college, where she lit up every room with her smile and infectious laugh. When I asked her to marry me, I never thought we'd be anything but happy. And yet, here we were. It started small. She was distant. Her phone was always face down. She started working late, even though her job as a freelance graphic designer didn't require a clock-in, clock-out schedule. I wanted to trust her, I really did, but one evening, when she left her laptop open on the dining table, I saw a name pop up in her email inbox. Brad. The subject line read, "Miss you already." My stomach sank. My hands trembled as I clicked it open. The message wasn't explicit, but it didn't need to be. "I can't stop thinking about this afternoon. You looked incredible in that dress. Let's do it again soon." I closed the laptop and stared at the wall, the pieces of our life together shattering in my mind like glass. I didn't confront her right away. Instead, I decided to gather evidence. Over the next 2 weeks, I became a man obsessed. I installed a small GPS tracker in her car, synced her phone to our shared cloud account, and most painfully, started reading her texts. I knew the truth before she ever said a word. She was seeing Brad, a co-worker from a previous contract. Their messages were filled with affection, longing, and passion, the kind we hadn't shared in years. The knowledge burned inside me, but I knew I couldn't just confront her and let her wriggle out with lies. No, I wanted her to face the truth, to see the pain she caused and understand the gravity of her betrayal. So I planned my baking revenge. Sophie's birthday was coming up, and she loved celebrating. Every year, I baked her favorite cake, a double-layered chocolate masterpiece with raspberry filling and buttercream frosting. She always said no one made it better than me. This year, though, it wouldn't just be a cake. It would be a reckoning. I started by gathering the supplies: cake mix, frosting, food coloring, and a steady hand for what I had in mind. The cake itself was nothing out of the ordinary, but once it was baked, cooled, and frosted, I carefully carved a message into the top layer using a toothpick before filling the grooves with red icing. It took hours to get perfect, but by the end, my hands were steady and my resolve was firm. When Sophie came home that evening, she was all smiles. She kissed me on the cheek, asked about my day, and acted like the woman I had married. But I could see the cracks. The guilt in her eyes when she thought I wasn't looking, the tension in her shoulders whenever her phone buzzed. "You're going to love your cake this year," I said, barely concealing the bitterness in my voice. She grinned, oblivious. "You always outdo yourself." "I can't wait." Neither could I. The party. On the day of her birthday, Sophie invited a few friends over for a small gathering. She wore a new dress, red and form-fitting, and spent extra time on her makeup. She looked stunning, as always, and it twisted the knife deeper. I played the part of the devoted husband, smiling and chatting with our guests, all the while counting down the minutes until it was time for dessert. Finally, the moment arrived. I brought out the cake, candles flickering atop it, and placed it on the table. Sophie beamed as everyone sang "Happy Birthday." She blew out the candles, laughing and clapping along with her friends. "Go on," I urged. "Cut the first slice." She picked up the knife and hesitated, looking at the cake more closely. Her smile faltered. "What's this?" she asked, reading the words carved into the frosting. The room fell silent as everyone craned their necks to see. "Happy Birthday, Cheater," the cake read, the red icing stark against the white buttercream. Sophie's face turned pale, then bright red. She stammered, "What is this?" I crossed my arms and leaned against the table, letting the weight of my anger settle into my voice. "It's your cake. Thought you'd appreciate a personalized message." Her friends exchanged uneasy glances, some already inching toward the door. Sophie's hand shook as she dropped the knife. "Can we talk?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Oh, now you want to talk?" I said, raising my voice just enough to make her squirm. "Didn't seem like you wanted to talk when you were sneaking around with Brad." Gasps rippled through the room. Sophie's best friend, Claire, looked at her in shock. "Is that true?" I don't know what he's talking about, Sophie said, tears welling in her eyes. Don't lie to me. I snapped, pulling out my phone. I have the texts, the emails, the GPS data. You think I didn't notice you wearing perfume to buy groceries, or taking an extra hour to get home from work? Sophie collapsed into a chair, burying her face in her hands. Please stop. But I wasn't done. The fallout, after the party dispersed, her friends muttered awkward goodbyes. Sophie tried to apologize. She cried, begged for forgiveness, and swore it was a mistake, that it didn't mean anything. But I couldn't hear her over the sound of my own heartbreak. You killed us, I said, my voice cold and steady. There's no coming back from this. I had already spoken to a lawyer. The divorce papers were drafted and waiting in my bag. I handed them to her that night, leaving no room for negotiation. She was stunned, pleading with me to reconsider, but I had made my decision. In the weeks that followed, Sophie moved out. I packed her things, leaving them on the porch for her to pick up. I changed the locks, updated my will, and scrubbed every trace of her from house. The pain didn't vanish overnight, but every day without her felt lighter, freer. The sweetest victory. Months later, I heard through mutual friends that Brad had dumped her. Apparently, she wanted more than an affair, and he wasn't interested. Sophie was living in a small apartment, struggling to rebuild her life. Meanwhile, I was thriving. Therapy helped me process the betrayal, and I started focusing on myself, working out, picking up new hobbies, and even dating again. The best revenge, they say, is living well. But for me, the best revenge was watching her realize the full weight of her mistakes. Every time I looked back on that cake, I couldn't help but smile. Sometimes the icing really is the best part.